Hello everyone, this is Avatar Sage 7 and I'm finally able to do the Outriders full game review. I did do the Outriders demo review impressions, and much of what was in the demo review holds true even for the Outriders the full game. And I might touch on some of those points from that previous review, but mostly I'll touch on the main points I got from the full game itself. Um, well, let's just say now, generally speaking, I've played about roughly 87.4 hours of this game, and it's taken me roughly 20 to 30 hours to get my first character to level 30, and subsequently another 20 or so hours to get my second, and a little bit less to get my third close to level 30. Right now, you're seeing my Devastator build here, and I've gone into about level 25, and he's closing in on level 30 already. And I didn't play him like other people. I've actually played him as a completely more power-oriented rather than close combat-oriented Devastator in terms of the seismic shifter path on this tree. But anyways, that's besides the point. So, like I'm saying, in its current state, the game is entertaining if you don't care about spending money and you have no worries about that. But if you're a more cautious spender, you might be better off getting this game when it's on sale. And I'll explain a little bit more on that. Again, it really depends on you. If you're more of a casual and you don't really care about getting to endgame, then some of the things I mentioned in the rest of the review may not really matter all that much to you. And this also assumes that the devs themselves aren't going to push out updates that address some of the issues that I will mention later on. Because if they do, then this review and whether it's worth getting this game or not may change somewhat or a lot. But generally speaking, from my own personal playthrough, I had a lot of fun going through the loot grind and leveling these characters. Obviously, I must have been enjoying the game a lot if I was willing to level both a Technomancer, a Pyromancer, and a Devastator, spending them one after the other to get them to level 30. Of course, I did do one expedition, and I can see how it works, so I can say from experience how it feels. But let's get to the good and the bad of my experience with Outriders. So generally speaking, the main big plus for this game is the loot system. It is probably one of the more comprehensive loot systems that I've had the pleasure of dealing with. I mean, there's been Path of Exile and there's Destiny 2, but compared to those, at least in this game, you see exactly what you're getting for every weapon. Every mod tells you almost roughly exactly what it's going to do, except for the fact that they have no hovers to tell you how much bleed damage you're going to do per second. You have to calculate that yourself roughly, but they do tell you in the guides if you search for it by going to the hitting escape, going to option, going to guides, and then it tells you how much it is under enemies and status effects. So, for example, bleed is 2.5% of your ability power. Every is 2.5 seconds. Ability power being your anomaly power, really. So back into the inventory. So like I said, the loot system is the biggest thing, the biggest hook for this game because it is, after all, a looter shooter. And you're going to be looting and grinding for the best gear and primarily the materials to create the best gear, mostly to upgrade the gear itself. So you'll be looking for the specific combinations of roughly 3 stats and several mod slots. This character doesn't have any uh, legendaries, which are purples. My other ones do. So obviously it's going to be a bit wacky to show you that, but if you had some legendaries, of which I do have some in the stash here, you'll also be grinding for items that have multiple 2 slots, and you can only mod one of the 2 slots, obviously, so that means you still have room to grind the same item, but with different mods in the slots. Usually for these legendaries, the mods in their slots are always exactly the same, but for exotics, these rares up here, the oranges, the purple legendaries here, the 2 slots may be completely and utterly different depending on how you want it. You can at any time mod and change even legendaries, I believe, and swap out how they work as well. You wouldn't do that unless, of course, you already have the mod. And so, unlike other looter shooters, uh, of which they have plenty to learn from this game anyways, everything you grind for has a use and it's not totally useless trash. So in Path of Exile, I always had the problem where you had various loot items, and you thought, well, there's so much of this, maybe it's useful, maybe it's not. You maybe junk it, break it down for currency, maybe you don't. And sometimes you end up stuffing huge amounts of tabs of gear. But in this game, you're literally limited to a stash capacity of 100. So you really are forced to pick and choose which items you should hold in your stash anyways. But for your character, there's plenty of space as well. So if you go in here, each armor piece area has 15 slots, but your weapons in total here is 30, except for sidearms has its own storage stash of 15. So in Outriders, you kind of get a bit of Path of Exile and a bit of Destiny 2 all in one. You have mods and mod slots, but you can also upgrade the gear similar to the infusion system in Destiny 2, except here you have to spend the material resources that I show you down here, which is leather and iron and scrap and titanium, which is an extremely rare resource until you get into the higher difficulty levels or into the expeditions where legendaries become more common. You break those down, you get like 3 to 5 to 6 or something like that titanium, and every time you kill certain bosses or roughly on a chance basis, I believe, you get some titanium. You get enough of that, you can finally upgrade your legendaries to the next level. And obviously you go to the mod guy. The mod guy will be able to help you mod the gear. You say upgrade gear, and you select an item and you can mod it, raises its tribute. So I haven't bothered with this character. I've learned that since you're constantly changing gears so often as you're leveling, there's no point in raising your tributes at all, as you'll lose some of the shards after you break down that item that you use the tribute shards on. So it's better to just save it for better gear. Improving rarity turns. You can turn a blue item like this into a purple legendary, and then you can't really turn it into a rare, I think. Not necessarily anyways. You have to buy those with expedition drop currency. So like I said, you can keep upgrading the same pieces of gear if you don't want to grind for new pieces of gear, especially if it already fits your current build. So obviously this guy is closer to using anomaly status power and cooldown reduction so that you can use his skills far more often, and he's focused around earthquake, which I've brought down to roughly 8 seconds before I can use it, and I can use it twice because I have specific mods all around using it, using earthquake, boosting its damage. You can literally change how each class plays just through the use of mods and mod slots and the mods on weapons, for example, on how it works. So this guy is all about leeching health and staying alive that way rather than high armor or anything like that. High magic or anomaly power and cooldown reduction allows you to use my skills more often. And I have skill life leech and cooldown reduction and things like that, and status power so that my bleed effects last longer and kill enemies longer, doing damage over time. So that's the style of this character, for example. So nothing is wasted in the loot system here. Everything has meaning. You can keep grinding for more materials, repeating the same content over and over. Again, I will discuss more about how that grind feels in the content section of both the good and the bad. And there are interesting challenges with that. Modding, like I already showed you, is really you're able to mod the gear by adding more anomaly shards. So here you see anomaly power, leech, and cooldown reduction. You can add anomaly shards at that guy I just showed you, Zahidi, in order to boost the power of each of these. And it can get quite high if you do it for each item eventually. Best to do it when you're level 30 rather than wasting your time on gear you'll probably end up replacing periodically. Only a maximum of 1 mod slot can be changed. I have no legendaries on me, like I said. So only 1 of 2 slots can be changed. So once you change 1 slot, the other slot is locked, which means you still have to grind for the same item for your build if you need a specific slot to have a specific mod on it. So if you need both like a mod that has let's say heal per kill and blood shock, but all on one item, and the item doesn't have one of them, then you're going to have to keep grinding until you do get an item that does have blood shock so that you can mod the other mod slot to have heal per kill, for example. Right now, obviously, this character is still being leveled, so he only has one mod per piece, which doesn't really give him much of a choice. So yeah, also unlike Destiny 2, for example, another looter shooter, stat rolls can't be changed after the item is acquired, but here you can actually change those stats. Like I said, anomaly power, skills, life leech, and cooldown reduction on the stats on this piece of armor, and you can take anomaly shards and slot them in order to increase its power. So that's one of the good things about that. So I go back to the mod guy here and say I take this piece of armor. I want to change its stats. All I do is keep slotting shards. These shards you get from gear that is partially recovered on disassembling or gear that you've broken down, and it sometimes gives you shards which you collect over the course of your playthroughs and grinding, and eventually you can fill these to 555, and that will boost the power of these base statistics on the piece. Also, the statistics between pieces of the same level and even the same statistics like power reduction and status can also vary in terms of its power, in terms of randomized, slight randomized rolls on how it ends up. So it might have more armor, and a little less reduction, or more status and a little less anomaly power. So you can see that there's a lot you can do with the mods and a lot of customization that you can do compared to a lot of other games. Like Path of Exile is very not that great when it comes to customizing. You have to keep grinding for pieces of gear until you get exactly the right stat rolls, which means you're at the mercy of a random number game, which no one really likes to do. And that's one of the reasons why Path of Exile, to me, though enjoyable at times, is not as enjoyable as it could be as a looter. And for Destiny 2, the problem is also the same thing. Yes, the stats are extremely randomized. You have absolutely no clue how it's going to play out. You have to grind like crazy, and you can't really change its stat distribution at all. So here you can change the stat distribution, and you do grind pieces, and you still have to grind because you need 2 mod slots, and one of the mod slots has to have one of the mods you already won, because you can't mod both slots. You can only change one of the mods in one slot. So that's one of the good things, great things, the loot, the modding. The repeatable missions in this game are also a good plus in terms of content reusability, but that's really the same as playing Path of Exile over and over again each season to be able to, how can I say it, grind up a completely new character and a new economy is how they do it. But in this game, you just keep going up difficulty levels. If it's not level 30, it's a 31, 32, 33, up to a maximum level 45, which is like either world tier difficulties of 15 or so world tier difficulty of 15. And that's going to be super hard to get to grind to even that. It's already pretty difficult past 8. Or of course challenge tier difficulties. I'm not on a character with expeditions, so let's switch to a character with expeditions. Return to lobby, yes. Confirm. So a lot of repeatable missions. You can redo the entire main quest storyline. You can redo almost all of your side quests. You can redo all the hunts, all the bounty hunting, all of the collector missions. So let's go to my favorite Pyromancer, for example, proceed to the lobby and continue game from wherever the hell he was. And so you can literally select different points in the story if you want just to do that specific point rather than doing, of course, the entire storyline at once, which is something better done than Path of Exile, I might add, because in Path of Exile you have to do the entire story every season, each and every time, every few months if you're doing that. So that's crazy, but in this game you're allowed to redo any story point. So to show you that example, return to the lobby again, yes, confirm. If I want to go to a specific story point and start the story from there, I can. So I believe I can just drag this. Is it A or Q? Yes, Q. So I can go all the way back to the beginning and do specific story points. So normally once you finish the main story, the areas that you've unlocked through the main story are obviously clear of enemies, but if you go through this route and redo them, obviously they're going to be full of enemies again. Sometimes they reuse areas in terms of specific bounty hunting missions and whatnot. And you'll obviously be going through several of the same places over and over and killing those enemies. They're usually the same enemies, unless it's like a bounty hunt, where of course the boss is obviously your target, or if it's a hunt for a monstrous beast, then the monstrous beast is obviously going to be one of the different things in that mission. So it makes the content stretch out longer if you don't feel like doing the expeditions one day. So let's go back into this character in here. My main one, the Pyromancer, who has done one expedition, and it was really just a kill fest. You just go in, you shoot everything. You don't, unlike regular missions where you pick up loot as you kill, you get all that loot at the end of the mission. It calculates it. So I have access to expeditions, which is going to be one little table in your camp. So no matter where you go in the world, this table is going to be there. So locate drop pods. This is the end game. I reached tier 4, so that means my enemies are like, what, level 34 or something. And each time you log in to the game, these expeditions, which expedition areas or maps that are available are different. So I believe the last number I heard, as of right now, obviously it may change in the future as they add more maps, are like there are 14 expedition zones. And finally, if you can get 400 drop pod resources, which is right here, this shows you the number you've got, you can do one run of Eye of the Storm mission here, which is like level 35. And of course, you need to be able to pay a certain amount of drop pod resources. Like this one requires you to pay 60 if you look at the bottom right-hand corner in order to access this expedition called the Drop Palace. So you have to run a bunch of these smaller drop pod missions, and then you pay to drop the more higher difficulty ones or special ones here. They're nearer to the Anomaly Storm, and then the Eye of Storm is like the final boss kind of version of this challenge. So this is kind of like Conquerors of the Atlas or mapping endgame in Path of Exile. Destiny 2 doesn't really have much of an endgame that I feel, really, besides raiding, I guess. Raiding and PvP, but in this game it's all about expeditions, which I find to be quite intriguing actually, the way they set it up. So I haven't personally grinded this one out so much, only because I've been trying to experiment with all the characters and their playstyles and what suits me. So I've been doing the Pyromancer, that I finished off my Technomancer, and now I'm working on the Devastator because it's a completely different set of skills, play style than my other ones, except for the fact that I ended up reverting back to a play style that's similar to my Pyromancer with my Devastator. So the character builds, as you've kind of heard me alluding to with my talk of Devastator and the Pyromancer and the Technomancer, is uh, also a very good part about this game. It's because you have so many possible character builds that you can have. So leaving the expeditions aside, let's go back here to the Pyromancer, for example. So each class obviously has three sub-specialties that you can specialize in, or you can cross by uh, going like this or something like that, and taking away specific abilities that you can reach along this tree. So it reminds you of Path of Exile without being so super complicated. And each class essentially has its own special tree. So I guess this kind of reminds you more of Diablo 3 or Diablo 2, for example, the way their trees are set out. Just better in some ways because you can cross over. So my Pyromancer has actually specifically mostly specialized in the Tempest route, and I skipped some nodes that I thought were kind of meh, whatever. Didn't really care about them as much. So some of these are good nodes. Extinction is pretty good, but I opted for decreasing skill cooldown so that I can use my skills more often. So I can use my thermal bomb like every 7 seconds, which is extremely fast actually. Only Earthquake on my Devastator move is that fast. I found the Technomancer to have some of the slowest cooldown times ever. So with 4 classes and 3 skill trees each and a lot of perk nodes, as you can see just for this single class here, the Pyromancer, you have a lot of possible builds. And so, as I already talked about, my Pyromancer with the Tempest build. Uh, anyways, so those are the good points about this game. The loot, the modding, the class possibilities that you have, and variable builds that you can make. definitely can suit your playstyle. So for me, I tend to prefer status-based builds that focus on damage over time and melting enemies with burn or poison, toxin, or bleeding. That generally tends to be how I prefer, or hybrid between guns and bleeding, or guns and burning, or guns and poison. A little of both, or more on one side or the other. So now we come to the middle ground. I call this the middle ground. I don't usually talk about the middle ground of a game, but for this I did because it's they're not the worst or the best of it. The graphics in Outriders are okay. And there are some graphical glitches which I talk about later in the bug section. But otherwise, it's a solid Unreal Engine built game. I don't know which version of Unreal Engine it's running on. I also can't see the FPS on this game because this game's anti-cheat kernel level thing prevents it from allowing me to do so, which is another con on this game's side of things for certain people. Uh, but so far I've played smoothly. I have no FPS hiccups or anything like that. So I would say that this game is extremely well optimized. Even on ultra settings, the game ran pretty well. Right now I've set this to medium. It looks decent enough, worthy of playing still. Doesn't hurt my eyes in terms of like pixelation, unlike original Morrowind or anything like that. Mostly made the changes to NVIDIA's GeForce app. Would I say the graphics are great? Not really by a long shot. This isn't a Black Desert Online or anything like that. I mean, it's flashy, don't get me wrong, but it's not that flashy. This game kind of reminds me of Mass Effect 3 in some ways. Still, it is better looking than the graphics of Guild Wars 2 or, to me, Final Fantasy Realm Reborn, but I guess that depends on how you consider it. Maybe it's just anime graphic design doesn't really suit me. Appearance customization I consider in the middle ground area because it's not really that great of customization. I mean, if you're looking to customize your character to look exactly the way you want, or to look like Alexis Strauss, as MXR kind of enjoys doing in his MXR mod videos, you will be sorely disappointed because this game doesn't really have that. Where is that? I believe, yes, the haircut thing. So you go into here, and oh, sorry, hit the drop pod guy. This is you can actually buy legendaries from him too. So if you have enough drop pod resources that you gather, you can buy legendaries and you can buy exotics to round out your collection because, I mean, the exotics or the rares are usually come in special sets. So if you find you can't get a certain set piece, you can see if Tiago has it, assuming you have enough drop pod resources. So this one costs you 3,616. I can't imagine how much grinding that's going to cost, required just to get even one legendary from this guy. That's just insane. You need 400 alone just to run the Eye of the Storm final boss missions. So that's crazy. So you can buy legendaries also from this guy if you do enough drop pod resources. 128, 128. So a little bit more survivable. Yeah. So let's see. Where was the customize? Change your appearance. Yes. Here we are. This is why I put this in the middle ground. Literally, these are all your facial models max. I'm not going to change this guy's actual facial model because then I probably won't be able to save it. Oh, there is a save option. Do I really want to save it? So you can, you got hair and skin color, hairstyles. I mean, compared to like Guild Wars 2 or Black Desert Online or some other ones, uh, the amount of customization, or even PSO2, has a more advanced customization editor than this. So that's why I put in the middle ground. It's okay. It's nothing to write home about, really. So yeah, the main story of this game is also in my middle ground section. I mean, it's good enough for a looter shooter. I mean, looter shooter's story doesn't really matter that much because you're all about the looting and the grinding, but it would be nice if there was a story that set it apart from the pack. I know Warframe has a reasonably okay main quest storyline, but it's too short. But still, it at least sets it apart, brings the world to life. This one does do sort of some of that. certainly, but the story doesn't feel all that amazing or sweeping. It's certainly no Mass Effect or Witcher or Game of Thrones style story. So this is no sweeping space epic or space opera. It's really just a survival dystopia with superpowered players or characters known as the Altered, and you really all you're doing is you just uncover what really happened in the main story, what really happened to cause the entire disaster before you even got here. So there's no romance, there's no dialogue options. All the choices are made for you. Whatever you do here is all part of linear railroad. Yeah. So now we come to the bad parts. Well, besides the ones I mentioned in my previous demo review, anyways. Same for all the other parts. So single player always online and server issues is something of a sticking point for it's how can I say it's like an annoyance. Like it really kind of bugs some people. It's not so bad once you figure out how to get past it, but it can annoy some players. So it's similar to when Diablo 3 first launched and they had issues connecting because of their anti-cheat and the fact you always had to have the internet online. I mean, you have to always be online in order to even play single player. So can be a deal breaker for some people. When this game launched, like many online access games, the servers had lots of problems and lots of people couldn't even enter the game without being kicked out. I know I suffered many of those situations in the first 2 or 3 days. So I just stopped playing this game until they fixed it, which they have now, so I can finally log in just to do single player. So if their servers are down, you can't play. If the internet is down, you also can't play, which is kind of retarded for a game that's generally and mostly about single player looter shooter grinding. So that can really rub people the wrong way. So I'm assuming that because your Square Enix account is required, that you do get automatic cloud saves because they have an autosave feature that autosaves every so often after traveling or opening a box or entering a certain area. I don't know if it's really worth it necessarily just to be online all the time required in order to play this game just for that automatic cloud save effect. I mean, well, thing. So this is a single player game, so do you really have to be online to play it all the time? And I say you probably don't need to, but whatever. So it's a consumer unfriendly. That probably won't sit right with most people. It kind of doesn't sit right with me, but I'll live with it because I'm reviewing this game and I wanted to play it anyways. So also the initial Outriders screen has no exit buttons, so if the servers aren't working and you have no way of leaving that screen unless you hit Alt F4 on a PC, which is kind of ridiculous because most games you should have an exit button on that loading screen. So if you can't server connect, you're stuck there unless you know to use Alt F4. And so it's a bit of a stupid UI quirk of this game. And like I said, as of today, April 12, 2021, when I record this video, the server connections has not been an issue for the last bunch of days, 4 days or so, 5, 6 days. So I'd say they mostly settled the server connection issues, but the single player online thing it probably will rub a lot of people the wrong way. And of course, to play this game, there's kernel level anti-cheat, so you have to specifically figure out how to make sure that your computer is actually running uh, a certain kind of setting on Windows. I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but it requires kernel protections enabled, and you have to fiddle with command lines and command prompt to do it, which you'd have to Google online. I figured it out, and I got the game to work. Otherwise, this game wouldn't even run at all. So it's kind of annoying. Not everyone's going to have the patience or know-how or desire to turn on device or kernel protection in Windows just to play this game. And this was also a problem with, what is it? Another game that I can't remember what it was. It was from Riot Games, I think. It was some sort of a knights game where you were riding horses. Just can't remember. Was it Banner Lords or something? No, it wasn't Banner Lords. Mountain Blade 2, I think it was. Also had a similar issue where they had kernel level anti-cheats. Uh, because of this anti-cheat system, I can't even see my CPU or GPU stats. I can't use Riva Tuner or my FPS stat monitor from Riva Tuner. So you can't use any overlay except for Steam, Shift Tab, things like that. So not a deal breaker, but it's annoying. Uh, yeah, so no built-in chat in this game. You can literally go searching for a group and you could join one, but all you have are emotes, which I press V and do, oh yeah, sure, I agree to do this. I say hello, I say sorry, and this is the only communication you have in this game. There's no built-in chat because the devs right now didn't want to have moderators and do anti-hate speech and anti other sort of stuff that they would have to set up in their chat system. So they didn't want to do that, so they completely skipped it. And because they also felt that Xbox and PS4 consoles had their own chat system and you'd be playing with friends, I assume. But if you're and there's also Discord, but they're assuming that you are going to be playing with friends. What if you wanted to play with random players like you do in Warframe, for example, where they have a matchmaking system for everything in almost everything in Warframe. In this game, you literally have to go out and search for a group yourself. Let's go to the matchmaker here. Boom, boom, boom. Where was it? It's this ridiculous thing that looks like yes, here it is, matchmaker. So you gotta go in here. You would normally generate a code to join people if you want. Apparently, oh, you can do that from lobby as well, but since I've disabled game privacy, it doesn't really matter. Okay, fine. Keep it closed for now. Say you want to join a random team, it's going to search for all the other PC and Steam players that are playing this game, and you'll join them, but there's no chat, so you literally can't share your Discord handle or Twitter handle or some sort of Skype handle or something to communicate with them. Uh, you literally have to use only emotes to do it, which is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous, because now you can't communicate with them all. So essentially, you're going to be doing this kind of like Dark Souls style. They kind of pop in and out as a little ghost thing, but unlike Dark Souls style, you actually do end up in their game. But the only thing is you can't communicate, so you just have to play along with whatever they're doing, I guess. I suppose it's doable. I should probably try out the mode in full, but I don't know how many players are actually going to be using this mode right now, because there are plenty of glitches on other people's machines, not so much mine. Maybe it's also glitched on mine. So yeah, I had one time where a player dropped in my game when it was still open. So now they've set the default to closed, which is okay, I guess. And you can't even ask them what they want to do, and they'll just leave. So because there's no built-in chat, there's only emotes. And what is it, waving to them? Well, great, but unless they select a mission, they don't even know what the hell is going on. So without being able to type a message, it's kind of hard to coordinate a random team selection. So that made it not so great for random players who want to find people to help. So this kind of turns me off. Same way Path of Exile is more single player than it is actually multiplayer, because half the time when I join a group, it's like literally they don't communicate with you half the time, and they just go through and kill everything. In this game, it's just like you just can't communicate because there's no chat. So yeah, literally you're stuck with only playing with your real life friends or Steam friends or people you already have on Discord or Skype who also have this game. So who also have a code that you give them so they can access your game. So wacky. I think it's a bad design choice, especially primarily for the players who want to, randomly group up and drop into your game. So yeah, only Steam Chat works as an overlay, and well, as you can see, I don't really have any Steam friends because I don't know anyone else who's using Steam for among my circle, anyways. So what else is there? Bugs and glitches. I've not encountered any game-breaking bugs that much. Like I had maybe only 2 instances of a crash to desktop Unreal Engine bug, which I sent a report to them through their bug report system. But primarily all of the bugs that I have run into are either slightly graphical or mission-based, where, a door doesn't seem to open after you kill all the enemies unless you leave the area and then come back again, or it crashes the desktop uh, because of the Unreal Engine, but that only happened twice. Then the other bug, what was it? Um, the other bug I had, I think those are pretty much it, really. Like nothing serious except for the crash desktop bugs has only happened like twice in the last 12, during the entire 12 days this game has been out. Most of the other bugs are really the game starting bugs, kind of weird. I found that this game actually crashed more often, more than twice. Actually, I forgot to count the times that I was using DirectX 12 and this game crashed 1, 2, 3 times already each time. Eventually, I've actually lasted longer in this game with no crashes using DirectX 11 than I have with DirectX 12. Plus, this game has some weird glitches in terms of it will not start, for me anyways, if I have MSI Afterburner turned on, like the program. If it's on, then this game will not get past the initial introduction movie thing where the bird flies through the screens. So yeah, those are some of the weird little things. And plus, there's a little graphical bug where my hair sometimes pops out of my helmet, like even on this character here when I'm going around. And periodically, NPCs, rarely, sometimes, but especially in the jungle area, after you finish the stronghold mission to save your mod guys, the Hidi, the scientists, they all turn invisible for a while until you leave the area. So nothing game breaking uh, otherwise during the playthroughs anyways. A little bit annoying, just a tad, but nothing that would absolutely utterly murder the entire experience. Mostly this is a pretty solid, stable game, I would have to say, compared to games like Anthem and whatnot. The only other whack issue is the same uh, world tier and balancing issues relating back to character build as well. It's just that, how can I say it? You can build whatever build you want to match your playstyle, but not all of them are as viable as they could be generally. Because the world tier difficulties here are the game difficulties, while you have challenge tiers for expeditions. So the higher you go on this world tier system, the harder it gets, and the less damage you do, unless your gear can keep up with it. The only problem is that means you have to grind to make sure your gear is at exactly the right level to match the difficulty. Otherwise, you do so little damage that you will just keep dying over and over again, which is what happened to me. So, for example, I've stuck with my Pyromancer at World Tier 6, which is like drop enemy level +3. I think I can go as high as +5. Uh, yes, +5. That's right. But only because I have to keep grinding titanium shards to upgrade my gear to a high enough level. All of it to a high enough level. Like this is a permanent unlock, so I can always wear items 5 levels higher. But if you play only at a lower world tier, item enemy levels will only drop 3 levels higher all the time. So that means I'm gonna have it a little bit more difficult in order to gear up to face enemies at World Tier 9 until I've managed to get all my gear to World Tier 5. And then what I would do is unlock World Tier 9 but not go to it until I have enough titanium resources in my character to upgrade all my gear such that I'm ready to automatically upgrade again in World Tier 9. That would be the safest route because it's sooner or later, if you keep going, either you're going to just keep dying and not be able to progress world tiers, or your gear is going to go out of date so fast that you will be unable to complete the story or complete the quests. So when you're leveling, you definitely do not want to advance world tiers extremely quickly. Well, you shouldn't advance past World Tier 6 anyways, because if you go too high, then literally, actually, you're guaranteed if you go higher than 2, 3, or 4, 2 or 3 for sure, that your gear will not be able to keep up with your leveling speed, because the main story gives you more experience than any of the other missions or side quests, I mean the side missions. So you're going to outlevel all of your gear, your enemies will become stronger, and you won't be able to kill them as easily. So you literally have to do side quests and side missions and grind for either the upgrade materials or better gear so that you can progress to the next world tier or even progress along the main story within the same world tier. Same with the challenge tiers as well. It works similar to the world tiers here. Of course, you saw in the challenge tiers section here that as you unlock each one, so there's going to be differences between fast clears because these are all timed. The faster you clear an expedition, the more rewards you get or bonus rewards you get. But also you can also build so that you're powerful enough to breach each of these tiers. You don't care about the time, you just want to get higher and higher tiers to get higher and higher level gear, which technically would help you complete lower level expedition tiers as well because your gear level will be higher. So you get to 8, your gear is level 38, but you go back to speed clear expeditions at tier 4, which is level 34, and you would be able to do it more easily and quickly, so therefore you get better resources. But of course, what you get is that you have a lot of grinding you have to do to get that far. So, anyways, if you unlock different world tiers, anyways, in the main world main story campaign world, then too quickly, like I said, everyone becomes a bullet sponge. It's going to be hard to advance. So it's usually a good idea to keep your world here. Either the best advice is really to advance to level 30 and advance to level 30 on like one of these lower tiers, like 1, 2, or 3, and then go back and redo the entire story or parts of the story or quests at a higher world tier to get better items so that you can upgrade your gear and upgrade your character so that it's powerful enough to take on higher world tiers. And then you start up the upgrade grinding process to do this. And this also applies to expeditions. So is this a bad thing or a good thing? And I already said this is in the bad area, sort of. I probably should put this in the middle ground, maybe. But it does lead to gear problems, which I've just talked about, because you're going to out-level your gear really fast. The other problem, of course, is if you want to progress past World Tier 10, certain builds will probably be more viable than uh, the build you're currently using casually. Like right now, I'm playing a build that's focused on burning people to death and exploding. It's still pretty powerful and it can clear mobs very easily. But I haven't taken it to like World Tier 10 yet, so I can't be absolutely sure it's going to be able to do it. Other people have found that mostly builds centered around bullets, volcanic rounds in this case for this character. So my character is technically built around volcanic rounds or bullets, so this ability, which is the same for Trickster and Technomancer, but the Devastator doesn't have this ability. So his DPS is solely relying on his other abilities, area of effect abilities, which may not be as viable than using volcanic rounds, which allows your gun to add burning and extra damage. And you can spray that a lot faster than you can spray abilities because, well, your magazine lasts longer and your cooldowns, unfortunately, for abilities are going to stand in your way unless it's like Thermal Bomb or Earthquake for Devastator. So apparently, builds around bullets, specifically volcanic rounds, trickster rounds, and toxic rounds, are currently the meta that people have found work best for advancing world tiers anyways. I don't know about exhibition challenge tiers since I haven't went very far in them either. So it's a bit of a catch-22 sort of thing. You've got to do a lot of grinding to be able to get enough gear to be powerful enough, but in order to advance world tiers, so it's best not to go too high in your world tiers until you're level 30 and you have a good set of legendary gear. I mean, you can, of course, just to push yourself if you like a challenge. And also the fact that build diversity may be limited at higher world tiers. I personally haven't yet experienced it because I haven't managed to breach those levels, high levels of world tiers. May be limited only builds centered around bullets and guns and like powers like volcanic rounds right now. The devs did say that they're working on adjusting the power level, and they did put out the recent patch on April 9th, but it nerfed some things and people weren't pleased about that. So I can't really say. I personally don't mind either way, but I do realize that it increases the grind level back to where the devs wanted it anyways, which is a lot of grind, as you can tell. But still, whatever. It happens. Yeah, so like I said, the character builds were a plus, but also at the same time, you may be stuck playing around bullet builds, which might be focused more on firepower class. So apparently, others have found that this route, like the top one, which is the same almost on all of the three classes that have bullet builds, tends to be the highest damage one, especially when combined with volcanic rounds or something like that. Uh, and with mods allow you to continually fire bullets, like if you shoot them in the head, Brain Eater, for example. Uh, and the other trees may be less viable, especially the tank tree is probably the least popular, perhaps. Like all it does is increase your defenses, except for this one. Pyromancer one here has kind of got some killing abilities here, unlike the Devastator. The Devastator is a bit more of a, some say it only tickles people at high levels of play. So we'll have to see about that. Maybe the gear just isn't powerful enough. Who knows? So there's a reliance on solely firepower. The devs should probably buff the power of the other trees, maybe, but it's going to be interesting to see how they achieve the game balance, because I can see it would be a bit of a challenge uh, to do that without completely messing up people's previous builds, possibly. So, or maybe they can create mods that do help with the buffing of other trees. Maybe up the power of mods that support, max health or status effects, for example, to be on par with bullets. But that would take a bit of calculation and testing, so it's hard to say. So conclusions. Yeah, what can I really say? Outriders, is it worth buying at the full price? Maybe. It's definitely a 7 out of 10 game. It does have mixed reviews on Steam, but I've never put much stock on those reviews. I put really more stock on my gameplay experience. Now I can tell that there are some things this game has that are good, and some things this game has that definitely needs improvement, or could do with some tweaking, I would more likely say. It's definitely better than games like Anthem or Marvel's Avengers. Uh, the bad mostly kind of might turn most people off. I say in my written review that it kills a lot of the good in this game, but now that I think of it here as I do this video review, it detracts, yes. It's just hard to say. It's kind of like a mixed bag. It really is a mixed review sort of game. If you hate dealing with, techie stuff to turn on kernel anti-cheat or enable kernel anti-cheat so that you can play this game. If you dislike server online, sort of Diablo 3, always online just to play single player things. If you dislike uh, those kind of issues, if you dislike the fact that getting to the end game is probably impossible, which is the same with Path of Exile, Destiny isn't so much of an issue. I guess Destiny 2, I mean, if you want to do raids, you could. But in this game, if you're casual, you probably won't care too much about many of the issues that I've raised, because you just probably won't really have the time to finish it because you're casual. You might not bother with that because you'll finish the story in like 30 hours and you'll still be maybe like level 27 to 28. You want to finish the story, you're done. You could probably drop this game at that point and forget about it, and you might be satisfied as a casual. If you're a hardcore player, this game does work out, but you might find there's a few things that get in your way of, like, reaching that end superpowered level that you really want as a hardcore player. So given how much success this game has had in terms of popularity, the devs might further improve and fix many of the game's issues in the future, so it might be worth keeping an eye on the developments of this game. There might be more expansions, whether they're paid or not, I have yet to see. Yeah, oh, another note is, like I said, from my previous demo review, that the levels, even in expeditions, are pretty linear still. They're all, you go in a straight line. It's railroaded. You go exactly how they tell you. If you don't really care about that, it's like each room is going to be a combat arena. You're going to be killing hordes and hordes of enemies. It's going to be horde mode from Mass Effect 3 or Gears of War. you're gonna be doing all of that kind of stuff. Is that bad? It depends on you. If you hate that sort of thing, uh, or you don't have any friends you want to do that sort of thing with, then you probably won't find this game to be your cup of tea. But if that's how you enjoy things, then if you like facing hordes and hordes of enemies and destroying them, then this game probably will work out for you. So I do hope more content will be available in the future for me to test out, of course. I did enjoy this game thoroughly, as I mentioned in the at the start of this video. And I do want to say that yes, I personally thought the game was worth the money. Uh, but this will vary on your preferences. I'm easily satisfied. I am mostly casual for those, so I don't grind usually all the way to the end, but I might for this game, just because I want to see just how powerful I can get my builds going, especially the ones that don't have bullets, like this, like the Devastator. This one does use the bullet method or bullet meta mostly, except he's not using the top tree with the weapon damage. That's all. So yeah, and that's my review. Hopefully you found that useful and informative. Let me know if there's any other content or games that you want me to review. Please feel free to leave a sub, a like, a subscribe, or something to help support my work in this channel. And yeah, I will see you again soon with more Outriders videos or other game videos in the future. Thank you very much, and signing off.